Hey, so I started iodine about 6 years ago. I've tried a lot of various doses. I've chatted with a ton of people about how it works for them or doesn't work for them or what nutrients help work or not or whatever it is. This page I wrote here, this experience with low and slow versus high dose, is a story I started telling years ago. This is kind of what got me into creating my website, whyiodine.com. And it was just my way of trying to share what I figured out that seems to be a bit different than the common narrative or whatever you want to call it around iodine in the community, the books, whatever it is. So what I'm going to do is read my page essentially, and I'll elaborate on stuff a bit. If you want to check this page out, you can just go to whyiodine.com/low hyphen and hyphen slow, or you can just go to whyiodine.com and use the search box that I'm in right here and just type low, and it'll think about it for a second and eventually come up with it. I guess just typing low takes a while to go through all that. Anyway, so I'm going to start reading now. Join along. Watch TV. I don't know. As someone begins to research iodine supplementation, they will most likely notice that there are about two main approaches. The main protocol is usually referring to Dr. Brownstein's protocol that he uses with his patients. Now keep in mind those are his patients, not just random people that might still be eating toxic food and breathing in toxic stuff and doing whatever toxic, sweet toxic. He's working with people, checking their nutrients, resolving issues like problems with stomach acid and gut bacteria, all those things I talk about that people want to ignore. And his protocol, I link to it here in this hyperlink, seen here. Oh yeah, by the way, you can highlight this stuff and have somebody else read it for you instead of me. And then there's a term low and slow, which is usually referring to the idea of starting at a very low dose and slowly working up to a higher dose. And that's something that a lot of people miss. They think that low and slow just means you don't take much iodine. The idea here is to slowly push through it and kind of like work out the kinks instead of just dump a bunch of stuff on something we don't understand anything about. After years of watching people in a handful of groups and researching health from many vantage points, I personally prefer the idea of low and slow for several reasons, which I will go over as I debate the two main approaches to iodine. High dose, starting at 12 milligrams or more. You know, it's really tough to put labels on these things. Like, 1 milligram is a lot for some people. Some people like 100 milligrams and they think that that's how we're supposed to live or whatever. So, like, this is all relative or up for discussion or whatever words you want to use. Most people that go with high dose start at 50 milligrams. Now, that's because Dr. Brownstein's protocol that's all around used to just say 50 milligrams. But I think what happened is he started to realize that people were picking this up, eating a Twinkie, and taking 50 milligrams of iodine and knocking all types of stuff loose. And when we're not supporting our whole body and we're just trying to dump one kind of detox agent through it, it doesn't work out so good. So he has since then been sharing the idea of 12.5 milligrams. And of course, it doesn't get like officially adopted because there's no like channel of like, with like patch notes and updates or whatever is going on. This is all just like people figuring a thing out, sharing information, just kind of winging it, unfortunately, but it's better than nothing. So most likely because Dr. Brownstein mentioned that he starts his patient, this is why people start at 50 milligrams. Some people start at numbers much higher. Some people take crazy numbers like 1,000 milligrams per day. I personally do think that's crazy, but if we feel like crap and that's the only thing we can figure out how to do, then have at it in an attempt to heal crazy stuff. I look at high dose as a specific drug treatment that may hold amazing benefits, but it's something that we should have a solid understanding of before we jump into it. That's really with anything. If we buy something new and expensive and we don't understand anything about it, we can destroy it before we get a chance to realize how dumb we were using it or whatever. So it's really smart to understand this stuff before we just go ahead and take these large doses of random nutrients. Low and slow, starting several milligrams or less and increasing slowly. The idea is to start at a low enough dose so it will only cause minor detox symptoms. I should have put potentially in there because not everybody gets detox symptoms. There's people that are like 90 years old today with mouthful of mercury fillings getting a flu shot every year, and somehow they're still just getting right through without a problem. I do that stuff in my 30s and I'm waking up on the floor having seizures. So there's a lot of difference to how people function and stuff. And that's really where I think a lot of people are missing the point here. Like, I got this other page I'll make a video for where I ask how many legs do you have, and it's like it sounds weird, but it's like, like I don't know anything about you, and it's not just me. A doctor doesn't know anything about you. You can't just be like, go do this, because you might have some crazy gene mutation or something. So when you read information, you have to think about how it pertains to you, and that's really the only way we're going to get through this, which is why I've written about 100,000 words, and I keep talking to people about how to simplify this, because, well, I mean, it works for some people, but whatever. So, whether we get detox symptoms or not, if we push slowly through something, we can kind of chill out. It's like, if you put fire into the fireplace, or firewood into a fireplace, and you do it slowly, you can be like, hey, it's getting kind of warm in here, maybe I should stop that. But if you just dump like a ton of wood in there, there's not really much you can do to I guess you could hose it down or something. That's going to make a huge mess. You can't really easily put that out once you get it going. It's going to get really hot in there. I guess you can just open the windows. So then we slowly increase the dose, allowing the body to keep up with whatever detox or healing might happen. Remember, we got to keep going to work and hang out with our friends and family and stuff without them being like, what's wrong with you? Because you can't tell them that you're taking some kind of brown liquid that tastes like pennies, or else they're like, you got to go to the mental hospital, there's something wrong with you or something like that. Maybe I exaggerated a bit there. And then keep up with adrenal fatigue. I say adrenal fatigue. I don't think that's really how it works, but we won't get into that. I look at low-dose iodine as a nutrient, kind of like a B vitamin or anything. We take it as a nutrient. Our body does something with it, just like many other nutrients that our body desperately needs. Some people start with even less than 1 milligram and have reactions, which could potentially be a sign that there are severe iodine or nutritional deficiencies. This is... whatever. My high view of high dose. High dose seems to provide people with some amazing healing results. Seriously, I've seen people get through some crazy stuff by taking a good amount of iodine. Of course, they were working with people like Dr. Brownstein and resolving other things. This isn't just about iodine. It's just that iodine is severely important when we get into these situations. While working with some type of doctor or coach, some people are using specific high doses to improve all types of cancers and other conditions. But I've only noticed people having great success on high dose when they work with a doctor or good coach. People doing it themselves say 1 or 2 ailments have been improved, but they still have a laundry list of minor issues most of the time. And that's something that's hard to portray, but if you spend a lot of time in these groups and you start to follow people, and I have some kind of weird memory where I can remember people and their profile and what their story was, they act like they've fixed everything, but they're still in all the groups complaining about all of the stuff that doesn't work, and there's just something not clicking there. So we have this idea that we just dump a ton of iodine on something and everything's solved, except we know that everything's not solved. I don't know why we don't want to admit it or whatever. But I believe this is because they are not getting their detox paths open, and they're just recycling toxins. Nothing changed just because we added iodine. It's not some magical thing that can just fix all of these problems that have been going on for years, decades, generations, whatever it might be. This is got a lot of work to do. Seems like high-dose iodine knocks toxins from problem areas, and due to the fact that these toxins can't physically be removed due to the nutritional deficiencies, which are what allowed the toxins to back up in the first place, it wraps them up in fat and water because there's really no other choice to help but keep them safe. Hey, can you be quiet? I'm trying to record a video. Sorry, my dog's trying to get involved here. If we have MTHFR or other mutations that inhibit our detox even further, or we're highly toxic and a dangerous toxin like mercury, for example, which will probably result in gene mutations because that's what's going on, high doses of iodine could potentially unleash a slurry of toxic waste into the blood and cause any degree of discomfort, meaning anything from a headache to feeling like we're dying. And I don't mean to scare you with the feeling like we're dying part, but this is why I'm sharing this, because I felt like I was dying. Depending on a person's current condition, if someone were to start iodine at high dose, the body may not be able to unleash this large amount of toxins, because our body sort of wraps itself up. It's like something's not right, our environment stinks. Let me try to just shell up and do the best I can until hopefully homie up there figures out what's going on. But if someone's been hydrating well with Celtic salt, using small amounts of iodine and other supporting nutrients to rebuild cellular health, and then they start taking high doses of iodine, which is what I did, their cells might be more able to knock a large amount of toxins loose. But even if the digestive system is doing well, this could be way more toxins than our body can process. A lot of people are like, no, I'm healthy, I can do this. And they don't realize what healthy or not healthy is because we don't understand anything about our body. Like, even the people that do understand a lot of stuff about our body and they're like doing all weird stuff and tricking us into hurting ourselves so we have to go buy this other thing and come back and do the crap and whatever, they don't really understand it. So there is no pure understanding, and then most people have no idea how our body works. And they'll admit that, but then they say that they're healthy and they can do all this stuff. So high-dose iodine might be great for advanced healing under the wing of a knowledgeable person, possibly ourselves, like me when I did it for myself. But otherwise, I see varied results in the community and a potential for issues that I will go over in my conclusion below. And I'd like to add that I knowledgeable personed myself, and then I figured out iodine. Like, first, I had a problem, and iodine helped. And then iodine created a problem because I took too much, because my body was all jacked up. And then I taught myself how my body worked, and I calmed down on iodine, and I came back after I fixed a bunch of stuff and started going back and doing what most people are doing without a problem with iodine. So I kind of like figured this out from a weird angle, which is why I'm sharing my story, because I think it can be helpful. I almost hurt myself with high-dose iodine. I don't share my story in an attempt to add fear to the iodine community. I share it because I think it's important, so people can hopefully get a better idea how this stuff might work for some of us. Although this experience was rather unpleasant, I learned a tremendous amount about detox myself and how to move forward with my entire healing process. Learned a bunch about, like, my life and stuff, like things. I now understand how to remove my mercury toxicity that has been holding me back in life for almost 40 years, and potentially may have severely shortened my enjoyable lifespan, because had I not caught on to this by messing up and falling for medication, I might have just slowly aged and got crappy and been like, I don't really know what's going on, I should probably go to a doctor and get some drugs. But instead, I got hit in the face with a 2x4, and I was like, whoa, something's not right. I think I need to start paying attention. And I opened my eyes and fell down about 1,000 rabbit holes, and here we are. Although still very subtle, I've had just about every early symptom of multiple sclerosis, and a lot of the science connects mercury to MS-like symptoms. That's weird. One of the most toxic elements to humans can cause MS? No way. I started iodine at 2.5 milligrams with all the supporting nutrients, meaning I just took small amounts of some magnesium and selenium and stuff. I didn't go crazy. I just wanted to make sure my body had it in case I was super low on it. And I added 2.5 milligrams per week. So every day I took 1 drop of 2% Lugol's iodine, which is 2.5 milligrams, which you can learn more about if you go to dropyoulater.com, which I made so you can count your drops. Took 1 drop every day for a week. Then the next week I took 2 drops every day. And then the week after that, I took 3 drops every day. And after a little while, I started taking the weekends off just to pause and let my body kind of use up the iodine that I was pushing so I wouldn't go into too much. Anyway, once I got to about 40 milligrams, I couldn't figure out how to get around the extra brain fog, reduced energy, and minor body pain, etc., which eventually led me to attempt high-dose iodine. I figured maybe I should try high-dose iodine before continuing to disagree with the idea, because what do I know? I'm just somebody that's fixed a bunch of stuff after looking at it real simply. And over the course of about a week or two, I upped my dose in about 25 to 50 milligram increments each day. And I estimate that I took about 1,500 milligrams over the course of about a week. I don't know if I worded this poorly, but some people think that I took 1,500 milligrams every day. Over the course of about a week or two, I took somewhere about 15 to maybe 2,500 milligrams. I kind of just stopped counting after a while because, the idea of just adding more of this stuff and not feeling it do something as I do that, it just doesn't make any sense to me. It still doesn't. And I wasn't a fan of taking a lot of iodine back then. I'm still not. There are times it's just not hey, what's iodine? I don't feel good. About 3 days after stopping iodine, I woke up one morning feeling like I was hit by a bus. This is hard to describe, but I don't really have much body pain, and I woke up and just going to move the sheet to get out of bed, I was like, what in the world is wrong? Everything hurt. Standing up, my feet hurt, and they were throbbing as if I jumped off 2-story building or something and landed on my feet. I couldn't think. Just trying to think about what was going on was it's I was in a cloud. It was so weird. I woke up late and I was trying to catch a call from my boss calling from a contract I had, and I answered the phone and I was I just couldn't I was like so brain dead from this. It was just incredible. And as I say here, I could barely form words or sentences. Focus, my anxiety was through the roof. I got to a point after a couple days, I was just laying on the couch trying to convince myself I wasn't dying, because it was just like, it's so hard to describe if you've never been there. But my chest hurt, got a lot of chest palpitations, which I get into when my metabolism isn't working properly. Sound, light, and temperature differences affected me emotionally, which was a huge realization, because I've witnessed it before in my past. So, and it usually made me feel depressed or angry as I changed. It's like realizing this, like feeling it in like full strength was like, So I was freezing 1 minute, burning up the next, while wondering if I should run to the bathroom because I felt like I was going to puke. I think some of us have felt this before when we have like the flu or something. We get that like weird back and forth, hot, cold, sweat thing. This went on for days and slowly got a little bit better. Then finally one night I happened to eat about 12 hard-boiled deviled eggs, which are, deviled eggs are a half an egg, so it's about 6 eggs total. Next morning I woke up, felt about 80% better. Like I could think, speak. It was like waking up and feeling that again. I was like, holy crap. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I had essentially just recovered from chronic illness. It was acute chronic illness that I was able to combat with the nutrients that were in eggs. Had I not figured that out and kept doing, whatever was knocking this stuff loose, I might have just started tucking these toxins away to where eggs might not have just pulled me out a week later or whatever it was. And I might not have felt that change and been like, holy crap. Like I went from feeling to feeling like death almost, to waking up the next morning and feeling my brain again. Not too many people go through that. And then I spent the next couple of years figuring out what happened and understanding that in a biochemical sense. And then I try to share that with people and they're like, what are you talking about? And it's like, it's really not that hard. We just gotta like forget about all the nonsense and I guess maybe keep reading the stuff I wrote. After some research, I realized that the sulfur in the eggs was most likely able to bind with the mercury floating through my blood, which was my understanding of it back then. It most likely made glutathione. And the zinc was able to take up the spot that mercury was knocked from, which is potentially kind of right, except zinc also helps generate glutathione. Acute mercury poisoning is dangerous, and that's why I talk weird most likely. I'm lucky and glad that I found sulfur by mistake and started realizing what was going on. Because like I said before, had I not, things might have just gotten worse and worse, and I would have just been one of those people that aged poorly and got Alzheimer's or whatever. Over the next few weeks and months, this led me to realize that I've been mercury toxic my whole life via my mother's mercury fillings. Doesn't mean that's the only reason I'm mercury toxic, and it doesn't mean that it's my mom's fault or anything. But I was a pretty weird kid, and it's coincidental that I happen to be loaded with mercury, it seems. Ended up having a memory flashback of my mom laughing, and I saw her mercury fillings in her mouth because, for whatever reason, that just stood out to me when my mom laughed one time and I saw dark spots in her teeth. Once I read about mercury toxicity and what it does to us, all of a sudden my childhood finally started making sense. I was an annoying, spastic kid that lied, cheated, and stole a lot, and that's just to, touch the surface. If you know a child like this, there's usually about 100 other things they do that suck. I got sick multiple times a year, and I was just a negative person. As I realized this and researched more, I started realizing that I've had a lot of autism symptoms my whole life. Like, pretty much like a lot of them, except for the people think that in order to have autism, you have to be like self-harming or unable to speak or whatever. There's a spectrum. That's what a spectrum is. Like, you can't the spectrum doesn't like go to a point and 25%'s left and it just stops. And it's like, nah, that's no more. Those 25% of people that are still partially jacked up and have most of their ability to metabolize left because their genes weren't destroyed yet by all of this stuff after generations. Like, those people are still going to be on the spectrum. I don't understand why we're so black and white with this stuff. Anyway, this experience of high-dose iodine knocking toxins loose caused all of my symptoms to stand out enough that I could read them very well, like I was saying earlier. Now that I understand the symptoms and have detoxed a bit, I can handle things completely differently, meaning I don't, lose my cool over stupid stuff and, just embellish myself in drama and worry about stuff that I can't fix, and like just things that you'd think I was normal for the most part, except I would just sit there and like drive myself nuts with these dumb little details. A lot of people do this. We just think some people are so detail oriented or whatever. Why I think low and slow is the way to go. Low and slow is just the idea of taking small amounts of iodine and slowly increasing the dose. In my opinion, this seems a lot more in line with how our body heals naturally. It took years and generations to get our body into the condition that they're in now. Now that we are finding the nutrients our body needs in order to repair itself, it will take some time for all of these processes to move forward and clean up the mess. Luckily, we can heal faster than it took us to hurt ourselves, or else we'd have a lot of work in front of us. Like, our great-great-grandkids would be the ones that were finally feeling better. But it's still going to take months, even years, to correct some of these imbalances. Sometimes it takes a minute to figure out which mineral is holding us back or which toxicity is still offsetting our body. We could have H. pylori infection in our stomach, or SIBO, or some type of other thing that's just completely holding us back. And if we miss that, we're just not going to get around it. It's like trying to get to work with a flat tire and fixing everything possible in the car except for the flat tire and wondering why we just still can't get to work. Some of us can clean up quicker, but it depends on generations of nutrition and current lifestyle, meaning were our ancestors working in a coal mine and living next to toxic things, or were they eating organic food because they realized something wasn't right? And then we get into that whole thing where we inject ourselves with stuff, which is how I'm even here in the first place. So it might be best to plan for, might be good to plan for the best, but prep for the worst. And by worst, I just mean not assuming that we're free of toxicity, which I think I've said a couple times. The whole basis behind iodine in this protocol is that we're giving the body an essential nutrient that almost all of us desperately need and just don't want to realize. But iodine is just one nutrient, one element, and we are missing so many more. We have to give our body all of the other building blocks it's missing in order to rebuild our cellular health. Then iodine can get in there and clean up shop properly. If you broke all your manufacturing buildings, like, you can't just like hire a foreman and he's going to go through and everything works great again. You got to like actually physically rebuild the buildings that are like leaking water and stuff. And that's what we've done. Our cells are broken little factories that are starving for nutrition and nurturing. It's almost like iodine has two functions. Sometimes it acts like a vitamin or a mineral that we can use to rebalance our body, those cells. And other times it's like a miracle drug that pushes our body to do things we don't fully understand. And that's actually through pushing genes that can turn iodine into something that we really need, and lots of it possibly, or just wrapping the toxins up in fat and allowing us to rebuild cells while that stuff is just being held off to the side. That stuff gets super complicated, but we can't really change it, so I don't know why I have to figure out exactly what it is. Iodine also chelates a lot of things that other substances are not able to, allowing us to remove a lot of nasty substances. Now, iodine doesn't really technically chelate, but it ends up causing toxins to be removed. So saying chelate is okay because people don't even really understand what it is anyway. We have natural chelators. That's what we're trying to get to function by restoring our balance. Do I go off topic a lot or like ramble? I just feel like sometimes I do. Iodine also helps clean up cells with apoptosis, which may be its main method of helping us detox metals. I feel like I get ahead of myself sometimes too. As these cells are sent for recycling, we have to feed our available cells to build the components required to process these toxins, which takes a lot of nutrients. So we have to rebuild the system that the toxins are going to go through. But the toxins were part of the system, and we just knocked them off. And now we need to get them through the system that has broken stuff. And that's why we got to go slow, because if we do that real fast, it hurts. And if we do it real slow, we can get our metabolism going again, just like any processor engine. Got to run for a minute. My wife's home. Okay, I'm back. So any process on the planet or engine or anything, like a fire is a good example. It has like steps that it has to go through. If you don't have oxygen and fuel and stuff, you can't make a fire. And then if the wind's blowing too hard, like there's all these things that make a process have to go. And that's really all that we're doing and we're missing the basic building blocks. And the reason iodine's so confusing is because it starts to help us push that stuff out. And while we're pushing it out, we are now burdening the broken system even more. And I think right now what's going on with the supply chain, if like anybody is really digging into like, because like seeing how long it takes some stuff to come back online just seems ridiculous. And sometimes it is, but sometimes it's actually because things just take forever. You got to ship stuff over here. It takes a while for people to unbox it and do whatever they got to do, wait for parts to come in, and then it just takes forever. So that's really what's happening inside. We are at the point where we're realizing there's a problem, and we don't realize that it's just the tip of the iceberg and there's a whole bunch going on underneath. So as these cells are sent for recycling, we have to feed our available cells to build the components required to process the toxins, which takes a lot of nutrients. That is like, that piece right there is pretty much the crux of what we're doing. If we just try to dump one nutrient through, we might will most likely end up, if the nutrient helps, create a bunch of byproducts that now need to be sent somewhere else and depend on other nutrients. But if we're only getting one nutrient, we changed one thing, there's a new mess made depending on a different nutrient, and now we're just stuck there. It's really not much changed. And some people are then pushing that one nutrient even further and like kind of overloading that one nutrient and also creating the byproduct still, and then just sort of going in the opposite direction. When I say one nutrient, sometimes that could be 2 or 3 or 5 nutrients or something. We're built of a ton of nutrients, so you got to think of really anything complex that has, a good 100 different pieces, and you're sitting there with 5 of them. Like, it might do a little bit, but it's probably not going to make it too far. And like I explained, we have to feed the available cells that we have so we can get whatever's being apoptosis back through and out and rebuild the cells that were apoptosis, because that's why we're doing that. We're trying to get them out of the way. They're stuck there in purgatory. We're finally getting rid of them with iodine. Now we got to not only get rid of that, but feed the system enough to rebuild that cell and then nurture it so it can start making whatever it was supposed to do in the first place. So after messing with this stuff for several years, I have a feeling we need a ton of nutrients and a small amount of iodine for an extended period. So it's funny because, like, I think the best route into health is seeing iodine because it's so powerful and it's helping so many people with so many different crazy things. But it's like one of dozens of nutrients that we need to learn about. And that's where this situation becomes muddied, because then a lot of people are like, oh, you just trying to sell me supplements. And it's like, I don't really care what you do, to be honest. I'm just telling you what I did. And I own about $4,000 worth of supplements, and I don't really have too much money to my name or possessions or anything. So I don't know. You do what you want. I do what I want. So my conclusion is that I think high dose works kind of like a medication, and it might be able to attack and heal certain conditions, but it does seem to detox people. It does not seem to detox people well, possibly because it's storing everything in fat and water temporarily. That's most likely what most people's weight management issues are, is toxicity being wrapped in fat and water. And those toxins could be hormones. It's a lot of different stuff. Doesn't mean that we just have to get that one toxin out and then everything's fine. It means that our system is doing everything it can to shove stuff off to the side and continue working, probably hoping that we figure this out and give it a hand at some point. And it may aggravate adrenal fatigue, which again is really just more nutritional deficiencies. We can call it adrenal fatigue, but it's not exactly what people are looking at. A couple of years ago, we just realized fight or flight comes from our bones. Like, our bones are releasing a hormone that is supposedly coming from the adrenal glands. So I don't know what some of you talking about. Yeah, and we can knock loose a ton of mercury, which is really the reason that I don't, if it weren't for this situation of being able to knock mercury loose, I think high dose would be great to try. And if it doesn't seem to do anything, then maybe put iodine down for a bit, start over slow, see if that does anything. But I've seen a handful of people that start at 50 milligrams, who knows how well they do with other nutrients, because it's hard to follow that sometimes. As you can see in the groups, people ask questions and we find out they weren't taking selenium or whatever for religious reasons or something. Crap, I forget where I was going. And then, like 3 months into taking 50 milligrams of iodine, all of a sudden they go through what I did, where they just wake up one day and maybe it wasn't the same symptoms that I had, but they go through some crazy phase of detox, and they might not find eggs a week later and start catching on the sulfur and zinc and stuff. So then they're like, holy crap, what did I do to myself? They go to the doctor and tell the doctor they took iodine because they read it in some group online or something. And of course, now it's just, they're never going to come back, talk to anybody and tell them what happened or whatever. So it's a crazy situation. And that's really the only reason that I don't think it's wise to just start with high dose unless we have very limited time and energy. And we've tried low dose for a while, and we've tried what I'm saying about these other nutrients and figuring out how to get a lot of other stuff in balance, and then go for it. Or if we have somebody like Dr. Brownstein that understands it a bit better. But I honestly don't really see any doctors talking about this stuff in a way that I think really meshes with a lot of people. And people think I'm crazy for saying that, but I think a lot of people are crazy. So at least it's mutual, I guess. I don't know. It could also be mostly wasted because if our cells can't really use this, our body does have the ability to be like, hey, this substance is going to annihilate me if I let it into all my cells. So it can put up a defense type of system. I don't know exactly how, but I do believe that happens in a couple different ways. And I kind of see it happening with some people taking high dose. You can take 50 milligrams of iodine to go do that loading test, and most people don't have a reaction to that. But then people take 50 milligrams for a couple weeks or months, they have reaction. Where people take 1 milligram, they have a reaction. Something's up that we don't fully understand. Yeah, because they're not hydrated and stuff. Our cells have to take sodium and potassium and build this gradient in order to pass nutrients in and out. Without that, the cell is non-permeable. And then there's other factors to a cell that make it non-permeable, like oxidation and stuff. That's what when we get into these lack of wellness, it's these imbalances that cause things not to function. And it's almost kind of on purpose. Just like if we look at something that sits out in the weather, sometimes it sort of builds a shell around the outside and in a natural way of protecting the inside. It's just nature sort of kind of shuts down and tries to preserve what's inside, it seems. I don't know. I probably sound like a lunatic saying that, but if we're not getting sodium and potassium and, choline and fat to rebuild our cells, and we're oxidized and stuff, this stuff can't get in and out. So you can't tell me that it can get in and out because it physically can't. That's the problem. So that's a big issue that, we're missing when we look at this stuff. Kind of like people saying that the sun isn't real because oxygen won't burn without, you can't have fire without oxygen. So all of a sudden they understand how the sun works, which is pretty cool. But I'm not going off topic or anything. Yeah, so... yeah, and if we take this in a pill form, some people pass it, the whole thing. Because the pill is designed to go through your stomach, or our stomach. And that means that, depending on some people's digestive systems, it might go through the whole digestive system. Because their digestive system might be working at such a small amount that the pill... it still thinks it's in the stomach, essentially. And then there's some other factors to the pill of it potentially evaporating half of the iodine before it even gets to you. So there's a lot to that. Low and slow allows the body to heal itself and helps us heal our adrenals instead of pushing them harder. And when I say adrenals, I just mean our metabolism, really. Again, this is old, and I just try to sometimes I use buzzwords that people understand, because if I say metabolism or something, they're people have this idea that metabolism is something they will never be able to understand or something. What did I just do? Oh, because I'm zoomed in. Yeah, so the detox we feel most likely means we need more magnesium, vitamin C, unrefined salt on food, selenium, other nutrients, or a salt load to help clear some bromide. Now, these things there's a reason that these are very commonly helping people. And that's why they're a part of the protocol, because they are part of pathways that are very active as we start cleaning the stuff out that iodine is going to dislodge. Now, iodine can dislodge a lot of various things and create a lot of various metabolic processes, but it's going to push out a ton of bromide, because bromide or bromine, whatever, is its like cousin or sibling or whatever. It works in a very similar way, and it takes up the same spots, so they push each other around a lot. So we're going to get a lot of that, and going after that can be very beneficial. A lot of people are salt loading all the time before they even start iodine or as they start it, and I don't think that's a great idea, because drinking salt water has a couple implications long term. I think we want to save salt loading for every once in a while, checking to see if we can hydrate better by getting that extra bit of salt. If I do that and I feel like I hydrated, I add more salt to my food, and then salt loading doesn't seem to do anything the next time, which I think is a better way to do it. And then when we have symptoms of bromide detox, which I list on my site on a page about bromide, then we can salt load. And now our body can probably utilize it much better than if we'd been doing this for the past couple weeks for no reason. But magnesium is a huge piece of this. It's the first piece of converting protein into all the different stuff we need. Vitamin C is very important if we're cleaning up oxidation. We might not need a ton of it. I think going for food sources is best. Unrefined salt, I think we can get a ton of that before we even start iodine, and get a lot of benefits by cleaning stuff out of our sinuses and all that. And that should really help catch up on the bromide, getting all that extra salt. And then all these things should just help us catch up on stuff that we've been low on. Like, a large majority of the U.S. is low on magnesium and pretty much everything else. So a lot of times when people start iodine, they're like, there's a lot of other nutrients. And it's like, yeah, we're low on a lot of nutrients, and iodine is one of the most important ones. So as we start doing this, we're going to need a lot of other nutrients if we want to heal our body. Unless for some reason we're old, and old people happen to still have genes and they can do this. And you see people in the groups going, I'm taking iodine, I don't have any detox symptoms. What's up with that? And it's like, well, sounds backwards, but you're old. Your body's not destroyed yet, or your genes aren't destroyed yet. Those people may have clogged situations that they've created in their lifetime, but they still have functioning genes. They weren't born with genes that were already like, there's no point in going after that nutrient because I haven't seen it in 3 generations now. These detox symptoms can be used to figure out what type of toxins we're full of, and what we're experiencing as we try to remove them. This is how I learned how to support my body and remove all this stuff. Like, by listening to what my body was trying to tell me, by thinking about, why am I getting a headache, and why do I feel blah, or, I got energy when I took this nutrient or whatever. I just slowly pieced it together and figured out that these symptoms that we deal with are our body, like, kind of inadvertently by mistake telling us what's wrong. Just like if our car is missing a tire, it's going to like lean a little bit, and our body's just leaning a little bit. And most people are like taking drugs and hitting it with something so it stops leaning for a couple of seconds. They think it's better, and then they find out a month later they cause like 10 more problems, so they just keep taking more drugs. Going slow allows us to make use of the Celtic salt. We're getting all these nutrients. A lot of people take a ton of nutrients at once, and our body can't even utilize them yet, so we're passing a lot of them. And then we're taking so many of them on top of that, like we're wasting so many of them. So part of this going slow is a way to save money too. It's expensive at first to invest in all these things, but if we go slow and don't just take them without paying attention to how our body feels, then they'll last a really long time. We don't have to keep replacing them. And then we don't have to complain about how expensive they are. Either path benefits from a clean diet with organic veggies and properly raised animal products. That's a lot to get into. I mean, I do cover that in a couple other pages, but we'll get into that more sometime. There are a few supporting nutrients we need to make sure we get enough of, but we should try to get almost all of our nutrition from our food. Now, I do take a lot of supplements, but I don't just bank on supplements being my way of getting back to health. I need to eat well, or the supplements don't necessarily work. The supplements are kind of like supercharging our food. So we have to build a good base And the other problem is if we're not eating good food, we're eating toxins still. So we're just working backwards and assuming that iodine and some supplements are going to work. And unfortunately, it doesn't. It might help a little bit, but it's not going to go on for long. Going as far as growing food properly in our backyard only helps our recovery because we learn how the system we're a part of functions, and we also don't need to pour toxic stuff all over our food to make it work when it's healthy. Part of learning how to make healthy plants is learning how to make healthy people, and vice versa. So this has been a pretty long video so far. I'm gonna blab more about how I do this. This is a little outdated, so this part might, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Some people like to listen. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. I've got a really thick head, and it took me a long time to understand the importance of this one. Water makes up about 61 to 65% of our body mass by weight. And you see some people saying our brain is like 80% or whatever it is, so that gets confusing sometimes. But by weight, we're about 60-something% water. It means we're going to need a ton of it to keep us fresh as we continually make new cells. If we're a large percentage of something and we're like rebuilding the something that something is something of, we're going to need a lot of that something, most likely. And like we urinate all day, so there's a good chance we're pushing a lot of water through. There's a good chance the food we eat is really just helping us suspend the water that we drink, which is probably really just helping us suspend the sunlight that nobody gets. The premise behind rehydrating is easy, but it takes getting into a few new habits for most people. Our body needs enough sodium to hold on to enough water so it can try to get all the potassium we need in order to, and the potassium we get from our potentially 9 cups of steamed veggies per day into our cells. 9 cups of veggies is a little ridiculous, but hey, you want to feel good and you don't know what to do, eat 9 cups of steamed veggies that aren't like covered in pesticides and stuff, and like there's a really good chance you're going to start feeling better, unless you have some kind of crazy SIBO that's turning the veggies into something else. Again, it's not always simple. I mean, it's pretty easy, but nothing's easy. What's easy? This takes a long time of getting enough potassium from food and sodium from adding Celtic salt to our meals. I sip on a small amount of water every often. What? Sip on a small amounts of water very often and get as much salt as my body lets me without overdoing it. My mouth or stomach start to tell me when I am getting too much salt. This usually means I need more water or potassium. Sometimes I just slow down on salt too. I wrote a bit more about unrefined salt here, right there. I start a good diet. I eat a lot of cauliflower, red cabbage, Brussels sprouts, leeks, onions, carrots, green beans, and garlic. I throw in other veggies at times, but this is mainly what I go for. I mean, really, cruciferous veggies are what I aim for and try to grow and stuff. I grow some like quality corn and whatever, and sometimes I grow tomatoes, even though I don't eat nightshades any other time of the year. Cauliflower is an amazing veggie and extremely versatile. If you don't like it yet, you most likely will if you give it a chance. There's a lot of different ways to cook it. It does smell kind of funny and stuff, but you can make it taste really good. Like if you fry it down to where it's like sort of crispy, there's like you can make I don't want to say cookies, but like chips out of it or something. It starts getting really good. If you fry mushrooms down, they get really good like that too. I also avoid all nightshades most of the time, except for tomatoes I grow in my garden, or eggplant peppers I don't really do anymore. But I only eat some tomatoes that's for a couple weeks a year, and that works out because then I can tell if the nightshades are hurting me. If I start eating nightshades out of my garden and I start feeling like kidney pain or my sinuses get weird or something, then it's a pretty good chance that I should probably just stay away from them. I mean, I'm probably going to continue eating those tomatoes because they've been in my family since like 1950 or something. My great-grandpa picked them up on a train going to New York City, and we've been growing them since. So I'll probably just eat one or two. But we got to still live while we do this stuff. If it was like giving me kidney stones or something and put me on the couch for a week, then okay. Sorry, Grandpa. These can inhibit kidney function and contribute to joint pain for most people. I don't have joint pain, so I just try not to eat nightshades most of the year, and then I enjoy some sometimes. It's just kind of how we roll. I mean, I enjoy some beers sometime. I enjoy coffee. I mean, this is tea right now, but like, we got to enjoy stuff. It's just we can't eat it all day, every day, and assume that we're going to be fine. I include small amounts of animal protein in each meal, but I tend to skip that a lot and only eat animal a few times a week. When I eat animal, it's like about the size of my fist. I mean, maybe even just like my fingers, not even my hand part. I don't know how I can see that. My camera's kind of weird with the light, but it's like a 2-ounce portion sometimes. It's really not that much. I snack on organic blue corn tortilla chips, and eat a small amount of only high-quality dairy. I'm not really a fan of dairy, but like when I do have coffee, I have an organic decaf, and I get a local creamer, and you can see leaves little fat globs on top that are like yellowish. And that tells me that it hasn't been processed to the point it's like dead. And that has some good stuff in it. Every once in a while, I go back to getting good creamer and decaf coffee, and I feel something kind of get rebuilt and detox. I make sure to continually hydrate and get lots of salt, which I'm repeating from the beginning for a reason. This page explains how I started cleaning my diet. That one right there, if you click it. I fix my gut. Eating mainly cruciferous and root vegetables will allow my gut to start repairing itself. Any chemical-laden food will harm the healing process, meaning that's kind of why we got here. If we just keep eating stuff that's covered in chemicals, then we're going to have a problem. And something that a lot of people don't understand that I think really is a bummer is these non-GMO verified project label things can still have, I don't even want to say the term, I don't know if it'll get flagged, but it still has that chemical on it because they use it to kill the whole field at the same time so they can bring it in and get paid for it being at the right moisture level or whatever it is. So it can be non-GMO and still be covered in a nasty chemical. And some people even grow organic food and spray it in nasty chemicals. So sometimes we have to be diligent about this, and whatever, that's how it goes. Just eating conventionally grown produce can contain harmful substances, so eating organic as much as possible and avoiding all processed food is an important step if I really want to see what my body is capable of. You know, a lot of people also aren't realizing that this processed food that we buy, like say macaroni and cheese in a box or whatever it is, or frozen pizza or whatever it might be, that food had to be prepared with water, and that water probably came from city tap water, and that city tap water most likely has fluoride added to it, and the people making that food most likely aren't paying a ton of money to filter that fluoride out of the water to sell you 69 cents bottle of Coca-Cola, whatever it is that people are. 69 cents, like anything costs that little. I guess like ramen noodles might be that. So if I were showing signs of autoimmune condition, I might check out bone broth, but I want to make sure that I'm not cooking it too long because it can turn into a histamine bomb, which we might not feel at first, but if we keep adding to a histamine issue, then we just make ourselves worse and randomly have a histamine reaction, don't understand why we can't feel better. I don't want to overdo the amount of bone broth because it's very, very high in minerals to the point that we can overload ourselves in some minerals, which is also why I avoid like trace minerals and stuff. And every once in a blue moon, try it just to see if one of those nutrients help me feel better. But a lot of those nutrients are way too potent, and we don't need a lot of them because we still have plenty of a lot of them. We just need very small amounts of some other ones. Otherwise, I just consume a lot of homemade fermented foods. I really enjoy the process of fermenting my own stuff, and I've noticed I feel better when I include them in my diet regularly. Mixing fermented stuff with cruciferous meals seems to have a magical effect on our gut and tends to produce great poops. It can take our gut a little while to switch over. Once we eat enough ferments, this can cause loose poops for a few days, but I felt like my health increased a few notches after this happened the first time. I ate small amounts of ferments daily for about 3 to 4 weeks when my gut finally switched over for the first time. Hydration is huge for our gut. Our stomach is the first place to lose water when we are dehydrated, so poof, there goes our digestion. Say bye-bye to all those awesome minerals we've been slaving away for that everybody complains is too expensive. I supplement. Before I get back into iodine, I want to make sure I have a few other things on hand in my body. If my thyroid has built up toxins over the years, I want to get enough selenium to attempt detoxing a bit. There may be an issue here if I have MTHFR, a common gene mutation that reduces our ability to detox, or anything like that. But if I eat well enough for long, I should be able to disable or at least support my mutations and get them back into detoxing the thyroid with selenium. I get into selenium a lot on another page, and I'll try to make a video on that shortly. But there's a bit to that. I guess I shouldn't get into that here because we're already going on like an hour or something, I bet. Then I get a few forms of magnesium. I talk about that too on my page about magnesium, about how I use all the different forms. I tried to share that with the group the other day, and I don't think too many people really got it. And the few people that do get it are already taking a few forms of magnesium, and they say it's working great for them. I've even seen people say that a few forms of magnesium without other nutrients have helped them tremendously. So I think we should have every form of magnesium possible. And if it helps us feel a little bit better, we should take some. We should just probably not take it every single day without paying attention. And then aim for the good ones, because that just makes a lot of sense to me. I eat a lot of dark leafy greens with my cruciferous foods. Like, I try to grow those in my garden. And I take several forms of magnesium, like blah, blah, blah. And the Epsom salt has sulfur in it, which is part of the reason that I consume that one sometimes, is mainly to go for the sulfur, not the magnesium. I use magnesium oil once in a blue moon, but I won't get into here because people try to strangle me that I don't think magnesium oil is the best. And I'll do a foot bath or just a full bath of magnesium, of Epsom salt. That's interesting. I just said magnesium. That's Epsom salt. There are many forms of magnesium. Learning about them and trying them can be very beneficial to most people. I get a lot of my vitamin C from food, so whole organic lemons blended with seeds and skin and all are great. I mean, it's really hard to do that at first. You have to go slow or else it'll be a little uncomfortable on the way in and out. And Camu Camu berry powder is a great, easy way to add a lot of foods. Now I also get rosehip powder and rosehip tea. The rosehip tea, interestingly, seems to get vitamin C further into my body or something. Getting enough unrefined salt is important here as well, along with that pesky hydration thing again. And here's some stuff about magnesium. I start iodine as low as possible. I have a hypothesis that our body only allows iodine to interact with our cells at a certain rate. I think this rate depends on how hydrated and nurtured our cells are. I have no idea how, but I think our body skips iodine when it comes to the rate, and much higher than what our cells can currently interact with. And I went over this a little bit earlier because I like to get ahead of myself. So if 3 milligrams cause me to feel detox, and taking 50 or more allows me to not feel detox anymore, like people claim on high dose, maybe it's because I'm not detoxing. I know, it's a crazy thought. I followed Dr. Brownstein's protocol without the 50 milligrams of iodine part, and also not really the same amount of all the other stuff he says. I just go by whatever my body wants, and I also pulse dose, which is another page you should read, or maybe I'll make a video. For about a month, I take small amounts of selenium, magnesium, vitamin C, and unrefined salt. You know, that's about a month, and it's not every day. I'm not taking the full amount. I'm just trying a magnesium. Do I feel something? Okay, cool. I'll take it tomorrow. Do I feel anything? No. Okay, maybe I'll try it again in a week. It's just, I don't know. It seems easy to me now, but it doesn't, I don't know. It just doesn't seem to work. Once I no longer feel any detox type effects from starting those, I start iodine. So if I took magnesium and it felt energy and then I started taking more naps or something, I wait until I don't seem to need to take more naps. Or if adding salt to my food makes me have to blow a bunch of snot out of my nose the next morning, which it did for a while, then I can just keep pushing that before I even get back into the iodine. I could put a drop of iodine on my skin just to make sure my body is not at complete zero iodine, and these other things can work a bit, but we can do a lot before iodine is even really capable of doing anything. Now I start with iodine at 2.5 milligrams a day, which is 1 drop of Lugol's 2%, and I increase slowly till I feel detox. Then I stay at that amount till the detox symptoms go away, or sometimes I have to figure out what I might be missing, and it's causing me to get stuck and feeling detox at whatever that dose of iodine is. This is where eating very well comes in, and finding special foods that provide whatever nutrient we need in order to offset the toxin that's taking its place. I recently went from working from home back to a commute and glued to a chair for 8+ hours a day. This caused me to depend more on supplements than real food. But in the process, I stumbled on a few nutrients that seemed to really help me move forward at different times. I may write about this more someday, and that's actually this whole entire website, which talks about methylation and stomach acid and all types of stuff, but it gets into a little bit more complex. That's why I have multiple websites, try to keep the iodine thing going over here and the methylation stuff over there and the conspiracy stuff on the other side. And I listen to my body. I listen to everything. I used to assume we just have forgetful days, sometimes by chance, but now I have a feeling those days are due to eating, drinking, or inhaling some type of toxin, including mercury. This could also be from infections, or like there's just so many different things that can impact our body that we don't pay attention to. Like we realize it can hurt other things, but it couldn't possibly do that to us. Mercury from fillings or bromide from soda or couches, whatever. Or once we provide our body with foods and minerals needed to unlock some mercury or other potent toxin, like we're talking about with iodine, we end up feeling it while it's flowing through our blood on its way to being removed. When I started taking selenium, I noticed my body and focus perk up in a way. And I felt like something inside me stopped attacking itself, or was finally able to clean some type of funk out or something. It turns out that our body uses selenium to interact with mercury and mitigate its damage while the mercury is floating through our tissues and brain. When I get a form of magnesium that my body can use, I get a burst of energy and my digestion changes. And when I get the right combo of food and supplement going, including iodine, my poo burns as the heavy metals are finally heading out. And my brain works entirely better the next day. When I started a new job, the water from the filtered water cooler gave me headaches because it was loaded with fluoride. Our body is trying to tell us all of these types of things. We're just bombarded by so many directions, we usually miss its cries for help. If most of what I said here is new to you, I would suggest reading my page called What is Detox? You can click it there. It's a hyperlink. Which continues with How to Prep for Detox. You can click that one too. Which continues with I Support My Organs! ! I don't know who gets happy about this stuff. To get a better idea how to attempt attacking health with the building blocks our bodies are made of. Was this article helpful? Yes. Ha. Can I do it again? Aw. So, yeah, that's about it. And you can see down here we get into more stuff. And I'm kind of on like the mobile format. And if you're on mobile, you see down here that I have all this other stuff broken down. You can go into all these other different things about iodine, like should I start iodine or beginner's protocol. There's so much to read here. So I'm going to go read some other pages. And if you want me to read them for you, go to the other page and look for a video. And if I haven't done it yet, go find me on Iodine for Beginners or on my personal Facebook wall. My name is Micah Coffee. I don't think there's too many of them. There's a few, but not as handsome as me. And just tell me like, hey, I was trying to learn about this other one, but you haven't really talked about that. And then if a few of you do that, then maybe I'll make that video. And then if like you guys share my stuff and like more people watch it, then I'll be like, oh, wow, people like all the stuff that I did for like the past 5 years. And maybe I'll make more of it. And then you guys can have more stuff to watch. But thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'll catch you later.